Hello folks, I'm Alex, this is Alex Unabridged, and this is my list of my top 10 favourite science fiction films. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, films, not books. What's going on? Well, this is inspired by Gareth over at Books, Songs and Other Magic, and also Michael K Vaughn, along with, I believe, Steve Donoghue and Grammaticus Books have been doing their top 10 science fiction films over various videos, I think. But certainly Gareth's and Michael's that I've seen, just kind of made me think about my own favourite science fiction films, and particularly because science fiction film is something that I have watched a lot of, and is probably my most watched and probably favourite genre for film, which is strange considering that I have, up until recently, really not been into science fiction books. So maybe it's something about the visual side of the medium that I gelled with, or have gelled with better in the past. So it just got me to thinking really about the difference between reading and watching science fiction, and with that, me thinking about my favourites. So I thought I would jump on board with my own version of this list. So this is my list. It is, of course, subjective. Your favourite may very well not be on this list. So sorry if that's the case. Not sorry. Warning, you won't find things like Star Wars and Star Trek on this list. I've never been a fan. Sorry, don't come at me. You won't really find anything much from before like 1979. I was born in 1981 and I'm very much a product of that. Most of my kind of favourites, if you like, are somewhat nostalgic. And you know, I watched them in my teen years, so the 90s, 80s and 90s, and a couple from sort of the early 2000s. But a lot of these films on the list are kind of, there's a hefty dose of nostalgia that comes in with, you know, with these choices. So I wrote down all of the films that first came to mind as favourites in science fiction film, and there were quite a lot. There was upwards of like 25 or 30 that just immediately came to mind, that I'd call favourites. So I've made myself a little rule on this list, in that I'm only allowed one spot on the list per director. Otherwise, this list would be dominated by only about three directors, I should think. Also, I know that Steve Donoghue and Grammaticus Books both did kind of separate lists for films based on books and films not based on books. I'm not doing that. This is just my list. So yeah, this is a mix. I don't mind whether they're based on books or not. So a few honourable mentions just before we get into the top 10 that didn't quite make the list, but I think are worth mentioning, that I really enjoy. The first one is Gravity from 2013, directed by Alfonso Cuarón. That is, of course, Sandra Bullock stranded in space. And you know, it's survival and trying to find a way to get back to Earth after the space station that she's working on is destroyed by a debris field. I really enjoyed the kind of the isolation element of this, and it's the only film that I have seen at the cinema in 3D that really worked in 3D. Like, it was a really interesting experience watching that in 3D. So that certainly got to have an honourable mention. Another one that is on Gareth's list, in fact, that I think is worth an honourable mention for me, because it very nearly made the top 10, and that's Moon from 2009. starring Sam Rockwell and Kevin Spacey as the kind of the voice of the computer. This one I really enjoyed because it's very much, it feels like a play. You know, it's just this kind of essentially a two-hander, and it feels very play-like. It's a cracking film. If you've not seen it, I thoroughly recommend giving that a watch. One from my childhood, which I remember loving when I was much younger, but I haven't watched it in many, many, many years, is Quatermass and Pit from 1967. My dad sat down and watched this with me because he remembered loving it, which is strange because he's really not a science fiction fan in any way, shape or form at all. But yeah, he watched this with me, and yeah, maybe it's the experience of watching it with my dad that really makes me remember it. But yeah, cracking film that one. And then finally, one from my childhood that doesn't quite make the list, but I want to mention anyway, and that's Short Circuit. That's complete nostalgia fest for me. That's from 1986. And so yeah, I absolutely love that one. So into the top 10 proper then. Okay then, in at number 10 is a real childhood favourite from 1986, and that is Flight of the Navigator, directed by Randall Kleiser. In case you don't know this one, this one follows the story of David Freeman, who is a 12-year-old lad who mysteriously disappears in 1978 and then reappears 8 years later without having aged a day. He gets put through this barrage of scientific tests. They find a spacecraft as well, you know, in the vicinity, and try testing that. And through these tests, and whilst David's being held at this kind of compound, being experimented on essentially, it becomes clear that he's had a strange encounter with this spaceship. And he then has to embark on a journey to help the ship return home, and also to get himself back to his own time. Yeah, this is just a great sci-fi adventure, really. It's very, very 80s American, I think is how I put it. It feels very, very 80s when you watch it now. It's just got that kind of charm that I just hooked onto as a kid. It's kind of wholesome. It's got some great sort of weird alien creatures on the spaceship. The alien or the spaceship itself really is a great character. It's just one of those that it's a comfort film for me these days. I have it on DVD and I think it's available on. I think it's a Disney film, so it's probably on Disney Plus. Yeah, it's one that if I'm feeling poorly and I just want to curl up on the sofa under a blanket, then that's definitely on the list of comfort films that might get put on. So yeah, that's number 10, Flight of the Navigator. Number 9, another one from childhood, and that is Back to the Future, Part 2, directed by Robert Zemeckis from 1989. So yeah, I don't get me wrong, I really, really like the Part 1 as well, the original Back to the Future. I think that's a cracking film. But there's something about Part 2 that just, for me, is brilliant. I love the future stuff, however naff it kind of is. I love the hoverboard. I love like the trainers that, you know, you press a button and they fit to your foot, etc. You know, the sort of technology that's envisaged in the future. I don't like the shark in it though. I don't like the holographic shark that comes out of the cinema advertisement outside of the cinema for Jaws. I don't like that at all. My fear of sharks, no. I didn't like that. And then I love the whole time, you know, the paradox stuff, you know, that you change something in the future and it changes everything in the past. And I love that element of it when he goes back to his own time. When Marty goes back to his own time and everything's changed and he has to then put it right. I just love that one. It's for me that's the best one in the trilogy. I'm not so much a fan of the third one, but then I'm not so much a fan of Western stuff generally. So yeah, part 2. That may be controversial, I don't know, but certainly for me that's my favourite. So that's number 9. Okay, in at number 8 then, moving away from childhood very much so, and that's with A Scanner Darkly from 2006, directed by Richard Linklater, but of course based on the book by Philip K. Dick. Philip K. Dick is one science fiction author that, prior to me kind of doing my science fiction for the Somewhat Hesitant series and kind of, you know, sort of starting to get into sci-fi more, Philip K. Dick was one of the few sci-fi authors that I had read a bit of and really liked, but found quite difficult, I hasten to add, because it's bonkers. Philip K. Dick stuff is bonkers, and the adaptation is bonkers, you know, as well, because of that. It's rotoscoped, so it's filmed in live action and then animated over, starring Keanu Reeves, Winona Ryder, Woody Harrelson. There's various other folks in there as well. There's quite a cast to it. But yeah, this one's about an undercover cop, Bob Arctor, who's investigating a dangerous drug called Substance D, but he gets addicted to this drug whilst he's undercover, and his kind of identity and reality kind of blur, and it's quite a mind-bending sort of film, and it explores kind of surveillance and addiction, and kind of loss of self, things like that. It's a thinky film, definitely, but visually it's quite stunning, I think anyway. And just in terms of things like one thing in the book that I kind of struggled to properly visualize was like the scramble suits in it, and having that visualization from Linklater really helped me just get my head around that and get my head around a lot of the other kind of stuff in it, because Philip K. Dick can sometimes be so bonkers that it's quite difficult to visualize it, I find, but this really helped. And this is one of the few instances where I'd say that, like, I think I prefer the film to the book. The book's brilliant, but the film just heightens my understanding, I think, of some of the stuff that's in the book. So yeah, absolutely cracking film, really interesting artistically, I think, as well, visually. Okay, in at number 7 then, we've got one from Mr. David Cronenberg, who could have had several on this list had I not put that rule in place of one per director. And this one is Videodrome from 1983. Yeah, I love Cronenberg stuff just because it is batshit in the most part. I love Scanners, I love The Fly, that nearly made the list. I know that was on Gareth's list. Cracking film. And things like The Brood as well. It's like, yeah, Cronenberg's great. I love Cronenberg's films. Videodrome though, yeah, I picked this one because for me, it was one of the most disturbing, weird viewing experiences I think I'd ever had at the time. And I haven't seen it loads because it's quite a lot. It's quite a lot to watch. So it's not one of those that I'd, you know, put on regularly. But I've seen it a fair few times, and yeah, I think it's a really interesting film. Although it's, as I say, it's weird. It's weird. You know, it's surreal, definitely. It looks at it's about a kind of a sleazy TV exec who stumbles upon a strange and sadistic kind of pirate broadcast signal channel called Videodrome, and he kind of then descends into this kind of hallucinatory nightmare. It's what, if you haven't seen it, watch it. That's kind of the only way I can describe it, really. It's a very strange film, like a lot of Cronenberg, and I remember it. Yeah, I just remember it being. It's one of those where I wanted to watch it, but I also didn't want to watch it. Keep watching it, and that, yeah, I think Videodrome was definitely a part of that education. But yeah, it really odd film, but I loved it. I loved the experience of it. It's one of those where I really appreciate the experience of that film. And that's I say that about most of Cronenberg's films. Actually, they're an experience. Okay, in at number 6, something completely different, back to the childhood stuff, and that is with Jurassic Park, from 1993, of course, directed by the great Mr. Steven Spielberg, and based on the book by Michael Crichton. I don't need to explain the plot of this, do I? No. Again, this is a nostalgia factor one for me, I think, but it is just a flipping brilliant film. The effects in it are great, and they were, I guess, groundbreaking at the time. The performances in it are fantastic. The characters, albeit different from the book, I think are far better than in the book. Less annoying, I think, for some of them. But yeah, just absolutely a must watch every time. If it comes on the telly, it gets watched. If I fancy a comfort film, Jurassic Park. But I have to be careful with that, because if I watch the first one, inevitably I then go, oh no, I've got to watch all the rest of them as well. And I do like the others, but this one, the first one, just, is the standout one. But yeah, just absolute nostalgia fest. Absolutely brilliant. Love it. Yeah, that's all I need to say on that one, I think. Okay, in at number 5 is an old film, but a recent watch for me in terms of the first watch. And that's The Thing, from 1982, directed, of course, by John Carpenter. I think this one's probably on a lot of people's lists. I know it's on Gareth's list and on Michael's list as well. So yeah, it is an absolutely brilliant film. But I only saw it for the first time last year, properly. I watched it for the Old School April readathon and watchathon, and yeah, I'd not seen it before that. I'd heard it, in that I was at a friend's sleepover when I was 13, and that was the horror film that they wanted to watch, that everybody wanted to watch. I refused because I knew damn well it would be nightmare fuel. So I sat out of view of the television, but where I could see all of my friends terrify themselves watching it, and it was hilarious. And so I remember some of the sounds from it, but that's all, that's all I kind of knew about it. But yeah, I thought the practical effects in it are outstanding. The atmosphere is brilliant. The sort of the sense of the fact you can't trust anyone, the sense of kind of isolation even though you're with people, the tension is brilliant. I just love it. I can't wait to read the story that it was based on later in the year, which is Who Goes There by John W. Campbell. I've got that on the science fiction for the somewhat hesitant reading list for sort of in a few months' time. And yeah, I can't wait to read that now. But yeah, The Thing, absolutely fantastic film. Okay, in at number 4 then is The Matrix from 1999, directed by Lily and Lana Wachowski. Yeah, I think this one was the first one I kind of watched as almost an adult, if you like. I probably was just 18 when it came out. I kind of went, oh, okay. In terms of, okay, this is something that's going to make me think. Right, okay. And I really liked the philosophy in it, even though I kind of didn't really know where it was coming from, as in what the basis for it was. I liked the questions it was asking. But I just, when I first watched it, I really enjoyed the action of it as well. I really enjoyed the fight sequences, things like that. And then I watched it again, a few years later, after I'd studied some philosophy at university and I'd studied some Baudrillard, things like that. And kind of went, okay. Started to sort of see where some of the questions were coming from in terms of, the content of the film. And yeah, just, it works on a slightly different level then. But yeah, I love everything about it. I love the cerebral elements of it and the questions that it asks and all that kind of stuff. But it's still just a great action film as well. Visually speaking, fantastic. So yes, The Matrix is my number 4. In at number 3, another one that I think will probably be on quite a few people's lists, and that's Alien from 1979 by Ridley Scott. Just a masterclass in suspense and tension. The claustrophobia of this, the isolation of it, the practical effects. I do love practical effects from the 70s and 80s. And even the 90s, to be fair. I wish we'd go back to practical effects a bit more than rely on CGI, because there's so much charm in good practical effects for stuff. And yeah, Alien's another one of those where I think that it works brilliantly. I love the design. I love the design of the Nostromo. I love the design of the kind of costume design and the stripped backness of it. Characters are great. Ripley's fantastic. Some great performances as well. Yeah, just brilliant. Love it. And I like the other Alien movies as well, and even some of the modern ones. I don't mind Prometheus and stuff like that. But there's just, if they'd only ever made Alien, that would have been enough for me. Yeah, absolutely fantastic sci-fi horror. So in at number 2 then. And number 2 and number 1 can kind of switch around depending on kind of the day / week, etc. I love them both for very different reasons. but yeah, for the moment, this is the order that they're in. Number 2 is Inception from 2010, directed by Christopher Nolan. Nolan is arguably my favourite director. I don't always love what he does, but I always love his vision and his ambition with stuff and his concept. Even if it doesn't really land for me. Tenet, I'm looking at you. But, generally speaking, most of what he's made, I absolutely love. And Interstellar and The Prestige were both in the running for this list as well. I really, really love Interstellar, and the more I watch it, the more I like it. But Inception, I think, will always be my favourite Christopher Nolan. I just adore that film. Visually speaking, I absolutely love it. I love the kind of the philosophy, theory, etc., what we want to call it, of dreams, dreams within dreams. The performances, again, some great performances in it. A bit of Tom Hardy never goes amiss for me. Great action, like one of the best action sequences for me ever, which is the one with Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the corridor, where the corridor is moving, spinning. And to know that was done practically as well, that they threw him around and made, the fight sequence, it's not CG, they built the corridor and they rotated it and they chucked them around in there. Yeah, again, another director who uses practical effects where he possibly can. Yeah, just everything about it. I love the story structure of it. I love the questions that it asks, the fact that I can watch it and every time I watch it I have a different opinion, or my opinion might shift about what the end frame means, in terms of the story outcome. Yeah, love it, absolutely love it. Fantastic film. Okay, in at number 1 then, something completely different from Inception, something a bit more nostalgic for me. And just a really good fun film, and that is Total Recall from 1990, not the travesty of a remake from a few years ago. We won't talk about that. This one directed by Paul Verhoeven, of course, another director that I like quite a lot, although we'll forget about Showgirls. RoboCop could have made it onto this list for sure if I'd have not given myself that rule of one film per director. But yeah, Total Recall, Arnie. Again, I'm not really generally an Arnie fan, but in this, fantastic. Just again, it's another Philip K. Dick adaptation. I'm going to be reading the short story that it's based on later in the year, which is We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. And just another bonkers story. And I love the whole question of, like, is this real? Is this a memory, an implanted memory? Is he actually at the heart of a conspiracy, or is this something that's part of this memory implant? It's kind of trying to figure all of that out. All the bonkers stuff on Mars, practical effects again. Fantastic practical effects. I love the design of it. I love the colour palette of it. I love the 80s-ness of it. Even though it was obviously released in 1990, it's got a very 80s aesthetic to it. Just the whole idea of it, which is obviously come from Philip K. Dick. But yeah, just absolutely brilliant film for me. Another one that if I need a pick-me-up, if I need to just chill out on the sofa under a blanket for whatever reason, that is probably number one on the list of things that I will watch. Another one that if it's on the telly, if it comes on late at night, even if I'm ready for bed, I've got to watch it. So yeah, Total Recall, absolutely love it. So there we go. That is my personal top 10 science fiction films. Do let me know gently in the comments what you think of my picks. It's probably, I don't know, to be honest. I'm guessing that it's probably a bit of an odd list compared to where you think, so there's quite a bit missing off there that I think would probably be deemed as the best science fiction films of all time, for instance. And that's because I either haven't seen them or because they're just not for me. So yeah, if you want to do your own list, crack on and do your own list. As I say, let me know in the comments what you think of this list and what would be on yours. What's your number one? I might do some more film lists, I think, because I do still love film, although I do tend to treat film as a bit more of a kind of a comfort thing for me these days, or like not necessarily watching like nice films, but I do a lot of rewatching. Rather than watching a lot of new stuff. So I might do a couple of other sort of filmy type videos. I certainly want to do a top 10 horror films. But I will stick those in generally in the future into a midweek extra video, like on a Tuesday or something, and we'll generally keep my weekend videos for my books and writing stuff. But yes, do let me know if there's anything in particular, film, TV wise, that you'd like to see from me. So that'll do from me today. Anyway, enough rambling. Thank you very much for watching, folks. As always, as I say, drop your thoughts in the comments below. I will be back on probably Tuesday, I think, with my January wrap-up video. I should have time to sort it out by then. So I hope you'll join me for that. I had a very, very good month in January, so do tune in to find out what I thought of my reading for that month. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.